Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of our online series associated with the MIT Sloan CIO Symposium. I have two great guests today, but before we begin, I'm just going to do a brief housekeeping. So first of all, the symposium is on May 20, 2025, and if you don't have your tickets, you should go out and buy them right now. It is going to be action-packed this year. Don't forget also that if you're a VIP, and you can be a VIP if you join our Innovator Network, you can also buy a ticket to the pre-event on the 19th. Besides this podcast, we have an Innovator series for people who are paid subscribers to the Innovator Network. Next Tuesday on the 22nd, Irving and I will be having an open Q&A. Mike Grandinetti may in fact join us. We'll see. So please join us for that. And then on Tuesday, May 6th, Carrie Perlson's going to come and give a really good talk about strengthening supply chain security and how to support your vendors. So do join us for that. And so today we have Irving Wladawsky-Berger and Mike Grandinetti. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Irving, why don't you jump in first?
Well, look, I'm looking forward to doing this podcast, especially because Mike is here. So the opportunity to be in a podcast with Allan and Mike is something I'm truly looking forward to. It should be a very interesting podcast.
So, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good. First of all, I want to echo Irving's comments. You guys are two of my favorite people on the planet, and so it's an honor to be here. I'm doing well. I'm still processing. So I've been at MIT the last 2 days at a decentralized AI agentic conference run by Ramesh Ramar, and then yesterday an all-day imagination and action session that literally went for 12 straight hours, and I'm still processing everything that kind of came at me. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of those very, very new insights with everyone as well.
That would be great.
Well, Mike, Irving and I call you the Energizer Bunny. We are impressed by the amount of energy that you always seem to have. But yeah, let's kick this conversation off with a basic question. And that is, can you define agentic AI and clearly distinguish it from generative AI?
Absolutely. So, obviously anybody paying attention to what's happening in the world of AI cannot help but hear about agentic AI. It's everywhere. So let's just really unpack it very quickly, right? So generative AI, let's call this sort of, the first wave. And it was all about the core capability of generating text and images, code, and music based on learned patterns. And as I think I've seen Irving refer to it, right, kind of a very well-educated stochastic parrot. Agentic AI is quite different. It's much more around planning, decision-making, and engaging in multi-step execution without any human intervention. And so if I continue, right, one of the things that we think about with generative AI is there's very little autonomy. It requires a human prompt to generate a response. Agentic AI, on the other hand, operates with minimal human input, and it's able to execute complex workflows. Now, one of the ways that it's able to do that, it has persistent memory, unlike generative AI. So it remembers past interactions, and it's able to sense and then respond to the environment around it based on this memory and adjust plans accordingly. So, maybe one of the core things that a lot of people in the CIO world need to understand is that with agentic AI, it's really much more about a deep integration. It's able to connect with APIs, databases, and physical systems, where assistive AI or generative AI is really very, very minimal integration. So there's a very significant difference there. And so I'll say this as in closing, typical use cases with generative AI are things like content creation and summarization, code editing and code assistance and brainstorming. But the use cases that the CIOs will find of benefit will be things, when we use agentic AI, will be things like workflow automation, having personal assistants, and really having an impact on, reimagining business operations. So those are, I think, the salient differences, at least to set a foundation for our discussion today.
So, I mean, if you took generative AI and just built an API onto other systems and programmed it to interact, is that get you to agentic AI, or there's more to it?
Well, first of all, there's clearly a tech stack for agentic AI, right? And large language models are, of course, an important part of that tech stack. So, yesterday, two things that I thought were very interesting. Daniela Roos, who is the, director of the MIT Computer Science and AI Lab, which is the largest lab at MIT, which is remarkable. They have 1,800 plus people working for her. She went on to say that she's been thinking about agents since the early 1990s. Okay, that's amazing to me. But all of a sudden, one of the things that I heard yesterday was it was when Claude 3.7 emerged a few months ago that demonstrated that for the first time, a large language model had the capabilities to support, a wide range of use cases, right? So we seem to have crossed a threshold where all of a sudden bringing in these large language models allows for a lot more autonomy than ever before. So agentic AI could be a large language model integrated to tooling, integrated to APIs, integrated to a wide range of other apps. And we're starting to see multi-agent workflow. So we're integrating, various agents together. So there's no, simple answer. There's a multitude of options there.
So Irving, I know you and I have been talking about agentic AI for a while, and I know that you've been working very hard to wrap your head around agentic AI. And I think in your last blog, you called agentic AI the action phase of AI. What was the light bulb that went on in your head, to capture what Mike is talking about? How do you wrap your head around agentic AI?
Well, I'm still it's a work in process. So I cannot claim that my head is totally wrapped around agentic AI. First of all, let's remember, and Rodney Brooks reminded us when he gave the keynote, was it at the 2024 Symposium, Allan, that Rodney gave the keynote, correct? And he reminded us that AI has been around since the 1950s. And it almost died, AI winters, we all know about that. But then AI came back with a vengeance based on training systems with lots and lots and lots of information. And in the 2010s, we saw the rise of deep learning, and famously, you showed the AI model, lots of pictures of cats, and as a result of that, the model learned on its own how to recognize what's a cat, what's a banana, what's a dog, what's a giraffe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it surpassed human abilities in all kinds of areas like translating language, recognizing natural language, language to text, helping doctors with cancers to go deeper into it, and so on. Then I would say in the 2020s, we saw the advent of the generative AI systems with their impressive ability to respond to a user's natural language prompt That is, users can interact with the system in natural language, and then the system was able to respond and create very high quality original content, where it's text, image, video, audio, software, based on the data they were trained on. So that's the Gen AI. Now, let's remember that agentic AI, I started really hearing about it earlier this year, but probably, let's say, last fall. And then all of a sudden, we started getting all kinds of articles, but it only really started last fall. And that's a good thing to remember as we go through the podcast, because in a number of the questions that you, Mike, and I will be discussing, since it's just started, then, we don't know the answer. And I've seen a number of good definitions. One of them, Wikipedia defines it as autonomous AI systems that can make decisions and perform tasks without human intervention. Remember, that's totally different from Gen AI. For Gen AI, all it can do is when we say, did the Yankees win yesterday and how did they win? It will find all kinds of information. It's a kind of search on steroids based on what it's been trained on, but it gives us answers. Then come agentic AI, and it's designed to autonomously make decisions and act with the ability to pursue complex goals with limited supervision. Instead, some definitions say with no human intervention. Why don't we become a little more modest, since this kid is 9 months old, and say it can pursue goals with limited supervision. Sometimes you need more, sometimes you need less. And one of the things I found in this very good article, actually, from IBM, is that agentic AI brings together the flexible characteristics of large language models with the accuracy of traditional programming. That's a very big deal. Using large language models and the like, we can build programs and systems. That's a huge, huge deal. And the only reason my excitement will be tempered is because at 9 months old, are you a toddler at 9 months old? You're still a baby. So
So, Irving, I want to come back to this no human intervention thing a little down the road, but let's get back to Mike for a moment. Mike, I guess if you think about the conference that you've been in for the past couple of days, or some of the companies that you visited, I mean, can you just give us an example of a breakthrough that helps illustrate why you think this is really a revolutionary moment?
Yeah, and so let me just step back and just build on something that Irving said. We're both baseball fans, okay? And if you look at the Google search index on agentic AI, it was basically flatline until February of this year, and it straight up. Okay, think about the Super Bowl commercials that Salesforce was.
That happened, by the way, right after your Innovator Network.
Absolutely, 100% correlation, 100%, even though no one saw it. Exactly. But think about even the Super Bowl commercials where Salesforce was promoting Agentforce aggressively, okay? So it is very early. And yet at the same time, let's just look at some agentic solutions that have been offered to us by the large language model Frontier Labs, okay? Let's look at OpenAI's deep research. Let's look at Google's deep research. Let's look at the Chinese agentic solution known as Manus, M-A-N-U-S, okay? Stanford Storm. So all of a sudden, a wave of agentic capabilities are flooding out of these labs. And then we look at the world of vibe coding, okay? And for those who don't know the name vibe coding, it was coined by Andrew Karpathy, former OpenAI founder, researcher, just a couple of months ago, and it has exploded. And as an example of that, right, I hosted a hackathon, joint hackathon between.
And what is vibe coding again?
Oh, so vibe coding is when the programming language is English or whatever your native tongue is. You do not have to know Python or R or C# or JavaScript. You tell the application what it is what app you want it to build, and it will build it for you. And that may sound too good to be true, but I have very recent experience where we hosted a hackathon in Cambridge at the Microsoft New England R&D Center with 200 Harvard Business School and MIT Sloan students, none of which were coders. And in 4 hours, we're able to build some incredibly complex applications using these apps. Now, if we now talk about how agentic AI is being used within enterprises, which is where our CIOs sit, I'll share a few examples, right? Customer support seems to be the very first use case. And we'll look at a company like Klarna, who leaned into AI very rapidly, and they were able to replace 2/3 of their customer support people while at the same time creating actually higher levels of customer satisfaction, reducing resolution time from 11 to 2 minutes, and saving a significant amount of operating expense in the customer support group, right? So I can share many examples where it's being used inside of the customer support function within large organizations, okay? But now if we start to look at other sort of what I'll call universal functions, sales and marketing, we now have no less than about 50 what we call, autonomous sales development reps, and these are things that are literally programmed to do all of the really difficult work that an entry-level sales associate goes through when they start cold calling prospects and sending out emails and trying to get meetings for the senior account executives.
And Mike, are these examples you're mentioning
Yeah.
in production, or are they in experimentation?
Well, I mean, so there's no question that a lot of them are in pilot mode.
Yeah.
But the ones that I'm citing are not only are they in production, they've been in production for over a year.
Yeah, but if Gen AI,
Yeah.
if I'm sorry, if AI agents are less than a year old, are they really AI agents in production on their own, or are they variations of Gen AI capabilities?
Right. And so, Irving, what I'd say is AI agents are not a year old. They've been around for a long time. Just
And
like,
Mike, just for the listeners, can you just clearly define the term AI agent?
well, I think we did that earlier, right? Didn't we start off the episode with that?
Well, we did. We talked about agentic AI, but the agent seems to be part of it.
Okay, no. So agentic AI or an AI agent in my mind is one and the same. Okay, we're talking about agentic AI, right?
Yeah.
And so just like there were many, many companies that knew that ChatGPT was coming out long before 3.5 entered the public domain in November of 22, right? There are many well-informed kind of on the inside organizations that were building capabilities like, for example, what was called GPT Engineer, even before GPT-3 or 3.5 came out. And so there have been organizations that have been using agentic AI workflows long before the last year. Okay, and so I think it's important to understand that although agentic AI has entered the common consciousness recently, there are a lot of organizations that, that have been working on the frontiers of where this is all going and have been implementing this within their organizations. Now, yesterday at the MIT Imagination and Action Day, one of the organizations that talked about, their processes was John Hancock, right? And this is a remarkable thing because this is an insurance company. And we all know insurance companies have never been considered to be pushing any level of the frontier of innovation. And they talked about the fact that they've got 40 use cases in production and 30 use cases in pilot right now. Okay, I can talk for way too long about what I heard yesterday about everyone from companies that are selling weather data to both private equity firms and farmers and the National Security Agency to fintech companies. It seems to be very pervasive in terms of the early implementation within large and mid-sized enterprises of the use of AI. Now, to Irving's point, it's the top of the first inning, right? And a lot of these are what people are calling low stakes workflows, not mission critical workflows that are going to, wind up getting a company in trouble if they break.
Yeah.
And so,
Mike,
yeah,
you have agentic AI or
yeah,
basically AI as an agent, or
right,
agents.
yeah,
Uh, it seems like the idea is we're pushing humans out of the loop to some degree. They're doing work. You just talked about in customer service,
yeah.
how they're doing work. Now you have insurance companies. What can you talk about the guardrails? What's to prevent an AI agent from
Yeah.
hallucinating like generative AI does, or how who verifies that it's actually getting the right answer?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question, right? It's early enough that any responsible enterprise, any responsible CIO or other IT executive needs to stay in the loop. Okay, so as Irving said so well, right? It's not autonomous. There certainly needs to be somebody who is responsible for making sure, and of course you have to go through a lot of pilots, a lot of iteration. One of the things that came up constantly yesterday was, these things are evolving. Like sometimes they're being updated 2, 3 times a week. And so everybody that's affected by that workflow is going to is going to be invited to a stand-up as part of a scrum and say, okay, how did we see this agentic workflow behave yesterday? What is it that worked? What is it that didn't work? What refinements do we need to make to it? So I don't think anybody is going to allow these things to just kind of go off on their own right now. Okay, so they may be autonomous, but if they're not delivering the outcomes that were part of the business case, they're going to be changed, and people are going to be vigilant about looking at those outcomes.
Yeah. So, Irving, what do you think the implications of these AI systems are?
Well, listen, there is no question that agentic AI will be a huge technology that will improve the productivity of people building complex applications.
Yeah,
There's no question. And uh, and a lot of it probably because it's still in such an early stage, may be a matter of definition as to what do we mean by building a complex application.
right.
Let me give you an example, and I may be oversimplifying. So in the 1990s, as you know, I was very involved in IBM with the internet, and we got very involved in trying to develop e-commerce applications. And with e-commerce applications, somebody go to a website like Amazon.com or any other and order something without people there because there was a catalog and there were other things, and then have that shipped to you. At some level, you could say that the e-commerce application automated your ability to buy things and have it shipped to you. You can go to a hotel and make a reservation online, as I did, by the way, Alan, I hope you don't mind my mentioning that I did that so I can stay at the Sonesta Hotel on May
Good.
19th and 20th to attend and participate in the CIO Symposium.
Irving, I hope everybody listening to this has their hotel reservation.
And
Right.
I did that automatically. And, you know, we don't think of that as agentic AI because we got so used to the fact that with websites and the internet and e-commerce, you could
Yeah.
do all that. By the way,
Right.
when we first started doing that in the mid-late 90s, it did seem magical, but
Right.
then it became boring. What do you mean? Everybody can do that.
Right.
Now, what I think we are moving to is that if you are an application developer, and let me use the term, and I'll come back as to why I'm using that, an application engineer trying to develop a very sophisticated application. Now, you will be the team leader of the people that are working with you developing applications. And the more sophisticated, the more team leaders you need. But now, in addition to humans who may be part of your team, you will be defining AI agents, which are programs, pieces of programs that can analyze data, can take actions with the data, and they are part of your team. So
Yep.
now you have a team that is composed of people as well as being composed of these AI agents that you and your team build, which will be automatically invoked to help you build this application.
Yep.
Now, why is that important? Well, because when you're building a very sophisticated application, you need a team. You're not going to do that on your own, just like when you are building a bridge, you will be an engineering leader and you will be gathering a team of people to help you do that. And the
Yep.
teams will have specific expertise. And now you can add to that expertise these software applications that know how to do certain things really well because of AI.
Yep.
And they will know when it gets invoked. You will develop them. You will essentially build those agents, and they will go to the web to get information when they need it. They can access programming tools. So now you have a combination of people and software agents that have
Yep.
autonomy, and that's how you will build it. Now, why is that important? Because we keep building more and more and more and more complex applications. And if you just rely on people to help you do that, you run out of skills.
Yep. Absolutely.
And now you can add these software agents to help you do that.
Yep.
We have tremendous, by the way, here is an example. Let me give you one of the simplest examples that I've learned from some of the people whose articles and so on I've been reading. Let's say you're planning a trip to, I don't know, London to attend a conference. And in order to plan that trip, you need to make an airline reservation, you need the hotel reservation, you need to plan meetings with different people. The way that people who do this often have been doing this, they usually have an assistant, and that assistant knows how to check which airlines fly, what days they do they have a seat for you in the class that you want, are the hotels available. the reason the application is complex is not because you're doing higher mathematics in the application, is because the application is composed of lots of little decisions that have to work together in order for you to have a successful trip. Now, as it turns out, a good human assistant knows how to do that. And why does he or she know how to do that? Well, because human intelligence knows how to put together a number of simple decisions to do something that works totally. If somebody said, well, write an application in software that can do that, there are so many different cases that would be a super complex application. Now, if instead of trying to write it as one complex application, you have written a variety of agents. Some of the agents know how to make airlines reservations. Some know how to make hotel reservations. They can find each other. If you are making the airline reservation, you can ask the agent that makes hotel reservations to come in. And so the agents are part of an ecosystem of assistants. Each one knows how to do something simple, but when you put it all together, they can do very complicated things. That's the future. That's how we see agentic AI systems.
All right. So Irving, a couple of follow-ups. So Mike, one for you. So Mike, Irving and I on this podcast have been talking about being a little bit more conservative with the speed with which AI is going to, enter into the enterprise in production. We've talked about how long it took for the internet to sort of develop and mature, how long it took electricity to develop and mature. We've talked about various economists. What I'm wondering, first of all, from your point of view, is how long do you think it's going to take for agentic AI to mature and become part of the enterprise? And do you think that maybe Irving and I have been too conservative in our views to date?
Let me say something, and then Mike can take it.
Yes.
Remember, any of us who've been involved in IT knows that when you're developing a complex application, a major part of it is testing. So if you build a skyscraper, a major part of it is testing. If you build a bridge, a major part of it is testing. If you're building a banking application, testing. Now, Mike, the question is, when we are now trying to develop an application with a multiplicity of agents helping us, how do we test that?
Yeah. Well, again, it's the human in the loop, right? It's the human in the loop. And again, we start with low stakes types of workflows that are not mission critical, that are not going to bring down the company if, in fact, they fail. So let me try to answer Alan's question and build.
That was a great answer, and I'll comment in a second. But what you just said is, don't do the most complicated thing first.
Right. It's very straightforward, right? But here's what I would say, right? So, Alan, on the one hand, there's a new agentic scaling law. And as we all know, Moore's law, you saw the power of computing double in 18 months. Agentic scaling laws are following a trajectory where they're doubling in capability every 3 months. That is 6 times faster than what we all have known Moore's law since the early 1960s and the founding of Intel. Right now, let me step back a second. One of the things that we hear constantly is that the C-suite and senior executives are very much all in on AI and agentic AI, and they want to move quickly. Younger, recent graduates who are digital natives are all in on AI, and they want to move quickly. But the great middle management stack is far less receptive to AI. And as a result of that, there is a significant amount of friction in the system. So one of the things that we know is that for this to take root in mainstream organizations, change management is another critical part of any massively complex, change in culture. So one of the key tenets is you need to involve HR on day one. This is not just a technical implementation. This is a cultural change, unlike any other that I've seen in my lifetime. Okay. So there's no doubt there's going to be a lot of friction. And yet, when you look at Accenture as an example today, one of our longstanding sponsors of the symposium, they're generating billions of dollars a year in fees, implementing these agentic AI workflows in their clients. And they know all about change management. They know all about how to, win over the C-suite and begin to put things in place. So I think it's still very early.
Do you think there's a danger of moving too fast?
There's always, listen, in any large organization, there's always a danger of moving too fast, but there's also equally a danger in moving too slow. Okay. And I think striking that right balance is critical. Okay. Companies will be Amazoned again, right? We will see a new wave of companies that don't respond quickly enough. I can tell you that I've been advising one company. The CEO of a publicly traded company refuses to allow his employees to use any kind of AI. I will be writing a case study about their demise at some point. It's a matter of time. So, there's no doubt, right? But when I see again a company like John Hancock or, the Hartford Group or many of these previously incredibly conservative, regulated companies moving at the speed they're moving at, and hearing what I'm hearing from Deloitte and Accenture, even though it took a long time for the internet and for, all of those things, the message they're sending out is it's happening at a faster pace. Okay. But it's not going to happen overnight. And I think it's going to be at least 5 or 6 years before this becomes what Irving called boring from, the days of the web. Right. Now, let me say one more thing, Allan, about this. There's a couple of standards that have emerged out of nowhere. One of them is Anthropic came up with something called the Model Context Protocol.
Mhm.
And unlike the days when Irving and I were living in the world of, building systems, and there was so much political competition over who is going to define the standard, everybody bought into the MCP almost overnight, including OpenAI. And so now 2 days ago, I was with Ramesh Raskar, and very much like Irving said earlier, right? You needed Tim Berners-Lee to create the World Wide Web, these standards and protocols, right? In order for that infrastructure to be, easily built on. Ramesh is now working on something called the Internet of Agents.
Mhm.
And he's creating something called NANDA, N-A-N-D-A,
Mhm.
which is essentially what he's calling network of AI agents and distributed AI.
By the way, other people I've seen call it an agent mesh ecosystem.
Yeah,
So
right.
in the same way that we have, um, lots of information out there,
Yeah,
now instead of accessing information like we do with Gen AI, you'll now be accessing agents that
right.
know how to do certain things.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge deal.
So,
Right.
so, so Tinder for AI and CEOs are going to swipe right or swipe left.
Well, um, I don't, this is a family podcast.
It was a benign
No,
joke.
no,
Your mind can go wherever you want, Irving.
no. But
That's the Latin blood in him, my friend.
no,
Okay.
whether you have, this gets back to engineering.
Yeah.
Whether you swap right or left depends on your confidence that you've tested the system
Right.
and that you trust what the system is going to do. And I keep coming back to this notion of engineering because sometimes with AI, not just with uh, agentic AI, but also with other AIs, people sometimes say, well, because AI can do so much, anybody can write an AI application or do a major thing. Wait a second, anybody can, but if you are building an enterprise application
Right.
that's supposed to work, boy, you better know what you're doing.
Yeah.
This gets back to if you're building a skyscraper, if you're building a bridge, engineering has
Yeah.
to work. And sometimes people say, well, but that's physical engineering. Software is different.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's even more complicated.
Yeah.
So there is going to be a period of major adjustment for people to learn how to use agentic AI. Let me use the term safely
Right.
so that you don't say, oh my God, I used the agentic AI. But
Hmm.
when I got to the hotel said, I'm sorry, your agentic AI must have hallucinated the fact that it thought you had a reservation. I never heard of you. I don't think you'll
Right.
be very happy with your assistant if that happened, and you'll be really upset at a piece of software that made a mistake like that.
Right.
So that's all part of the evolution until we feel comfortable to use it in mission critical application areas. Mike, do
Yeah.
you agree with that?
I agree. And the only thing I will say, right, think about what Tom Davenport has written about with the citizen developer.
Mhm.
Okay. And so there was a case study that was widely circulated about 6 weeks ago about the company known as Zillow, right, in the real estate space. And it was an opportunity for, I believe it was Anthropic and Replit, which is one of these vibe coding types of apps, to talk about how they made it easy for non-developers within a company to create largely simple apps, not complex apps as Irving is talking about, but largely simpler apps that are able to address, workflows that enhance the productivity of the team. And the message from that press relief blitz was that, it went into production very quickly, not through a development organization. So I think we're going to start to see over time a transition as these coding editors and coding assistants become more and more capable. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mike, when you joined the podcast, you reminded us that Irving has used the term a stochastic parrot.
Yes.
Now you're talking about these agents as if they're going to be reasoning, they're going to be planning, they're going to
Yeah.
be acting. Just for a moment, get into the bowels of how
Yeah.
these models work. How have the models evolved
Yeah.
from, doing word prediction algorithms
Yeah.
are amazing from a
Right.
Gen AI point of view to now actually reasoning. Take us on that journey. Paint
Yeah,
a picture.
because you're now integrating, and I think Irving in many ways already addressed this. You're integrating with a lot of tools. You're integrating with a lot of third-party applications. So you're now drawing upon a lot of the capabilities, right? So when I'm working with OpenAI, ChatGPT, or any one of these large language models, it's largely using the data that it was trained on to spit a response back at me. But now what I've got is I've got a workflow where many different mini applications are working together. So there's middleware. There is certainly tooling that connects me to different applications, as well as the large language model. And now the large language model, in many ways, is serving as sort of because of its ability to adapt, it's able to now take all of that information that is being sent back through all the sensing that these agents are able to do. And it's able to make decisions in real time based on that sensing,
By
right?
the way, the large language model is acting
Yeah.
or let me not say it,
Yeah.
humans are using the large language model as the tool for assembling and coordinating the overall application.
Hmm.
So there's got to be a human engineering team
Yeah.
that is pulling it all together. And you could say, well, but what tools are they using? Well, that's the power of LLMs. So
Right.
they will use the tool to put all these agents together to get done what they're trying to get done. And each agent has been actually the agent, think of the agent as a small piece of application, as a servlet
Yeah.
that has been trained to do certain things. By trained, I
Right.
mean program.
Programmed. Yeah.
And then the program may have been in Python and so on. And you told the agent, this is what you know how to do. So only respond
Right. Right.
when somebody says, does anybody know how to make hotel reservations? You do the equivalent of raise your hand, and now you will be invoked to make hotel reservations. And how do you know to make hotel reservations? You've been trained, that is programmed,
Yep.
go to the major hotel
So,
site.
so, Irving, help me out here. I mean, I hear what Mike's saying, but integration by itself or autonomy by itself doesn't, for me, translate into going from, a word prediction algorithm to actual reasoning. How did we get to reasoning and planning with this technology?
Reasoning is making a good decision. That's what reasoning is. That if somebody said, do you know how to make a hotel reservation? Yes, you assume they know, check the hotels you like, see if they have reservation for that day, and then invoke your buddy that knows how to make plane reservations to see if you can get a reservation. So the reasoning means you're putting together lots of little decisions to do the total thing. And the reasoning that we're talking about is not find me a cure for cancer. That's a whole other
Yeah.
level where AI can help. And but the reasoning is put together lots of quote unquote little decisions that then get you to where you are. We humans do that automatically. In our brain, where we're planning our day, we are saying, gee, I need to go from where I live to Boston. I need to drive. I need to pick up my granddaughter. I need to do this. And you organize your day by making lots of these little decisions. Now, if somebody said, well, I'll write you a big program to do that for you, that's way too complex because there are so many variations. But if
Right.
instead you can have these little servlets, these little pieces of program that know how to do certain things and they get composed,
Yeah.
now we are talking.
So,
So
so Mike, if I put together one of these programs the way you're describing to run a simple process, it has some models in it. Do these models evolve and grow as it makes the same decision over and over? Do they get better? Do they improve themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, that's as we started at the very beginning of, what's the difference between agentic versus other, right? But remember, even large language models are improving through human feedback. But all of these different servlets, I'll use Irving's terminology, right? They're all learning, right? So these things are constant, they have persistent memory. They are learning. And so they are getting smarter and smarter with each usage.
also, this is also how they improve. Remember, in Gen AI, one of the improvements is that when they screw up, the humans will say, you made a mistake.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is this is not the way to do it. And then the things change and you improve. So it will take a while. There will be mistakes. And then you debug the mistakes by saying what caused this hotel reservation to not work well. And then you'll figure out. Remember,
Yeah.
this is very important. You need transparency
Yeah.
about the decisions.
Yeah.
Why did you decide that? And through that transparency, we'll be able, you know, in AI, one of the biggest roles of humans is to help the AI get better by giving it advice. You screwed up, so now you should do that. This will happen here.
Yeah.
And Allan, if there is something that we don't know and where we might disagree, is how long will it take for what kinds of applications?
Right.
And that's the part that at least I don't know yet because
Right.
it's also new.
Yeah. And let me build on something that Irving said. So yesterday, one of the speakers, he's a Caltech grad, and his two co-founders are MIT grads. And they created what many believe to be one of the first quote unquote vibe coding apps. It's called Windsurf. And it named itself Windsurf because it was this harmony of human and machine. And one of the things that Anshul mentioned from the podium was the data that they are gathering, right? So he said every single minute, because people are getting code support. So the Windsurf app is recommending this is a chunk of code that you should be able to use in this instance at this moment. And in every moment, they're getting millions of pieces of feedback from these coders. Do I accept this code or do I reject this code? And then they're able to see in real time what it is that they decided to do in that moment. So they are gathering hundreds of millions of pieces of feedback every day about how their user community is reacting to their current capability and the code editing and assistance that it's supporting, right? So this is, I think, Allan, goes back to the core of your question about how this is getting smarter.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's not a human that's recording. There's no way you could record millions of these decisions a minute. It's obviously being recorded by AI.
Yeah. By the way,
Well, just one quick question on persistence. I mean, isn't it also true that persistence has been integrated into the Gen AI models, making them also smarter without them becoming agentic?
So we talked about this yesterday, I think, Allan, right, as we got ready. And OpenAI recently announced that it is building more persistent memory into its
yeah,
LLM. But remember, persistence alone is only one of many elements of what allows for an agentic AI system. I think it will certainly make it a more capable LLM to support agentic applications. But
Yeah.
in and of itself, persistence is not fully sufficient for that.
yeah. Let me
Yeah.
say something because I think Mike mentioned Anthropic.
Yeah.
And in fact, I read, and in this blog that I just finished drafting, I used an article by Anthropic that was recommended to me that's called Building Effective Agents. I don't know if you've seen that article, Mike, but
I have not, no, but I will now. Yeah.
I think you should. It's a very
Yeah.
good article.
Yeah.
And what the article, first of all, they explain the difference between individual agents that find each other and workflows. And a workflow is when an agent has been written in such a way that it will explicitly invoke another agent. That is, instead of the agents having to go to the agent mesh ecosystem to find who knows what to do that, if you know you need to go from the hotel to the airline reservation, don't just ask who knows about it. Go to the goddamn agent that knows how to make a reservation. And so you're linking agents together as an explicit workflow. And
Right.
those are important workflows are safer because you go explicitly, the agents have to find it. Then the second piece of advice that I really like, it said, consistently, the most successful implementations were not using complex frameworks or specialized libraries. Instead, they were building with simple composable patterns. So they are saying at this stage of the game, when building applications with LLMs, we recommend finding the simplest solution possible and only increasing complexity when needed.
Right.
This might mean not building agentic systems at all
Right.
if you don't think they are ready. Remember, you can always just write a deterministic application
Absolutely.
instead of building as an agentic system.
Yeah. Don't build it just because it's cool. Build it
No,
because it makes sense.
that's the point.
Yeah.
Don't, and that is such sound advice. And as you get going, do it with simple agents that, that if there was something wrong, the bridge won't fall down.
Right. Exactly.
Do it with something simple and incrementally then add complexity as we get experience. That to me feels like an incredibly responsible approach
Yeah.
to deploying agentic AI systems
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. And I think I have immense respect for Anthropic and Dario Amodei. They've always taken a much more sane approach. It's not, go fast and break things as OpenAI has done. And I think there's a reason why their MCP was adopted so rapidly. I think there's immense respect for Amodei and for Anthropic.
Go fast and break things.
Right.
It's not good software engineering.
Exactly.
Can we agree on that?
We can agree. I don't think there was ever a book required in any computer science program which had a title of that. I don't think that's probably the philosophy we want to teach our computer engineers and software developers.
Allan, if there is a consensus among Mike and I, it's that, first of all, this is super exciting.
Yes.
But it will take time.
Absolutely.
How much time? Probably Mike is a little more aggressive than I am at this point, but it will happen. It is happening, and maybe the answer, how much time, what you should say is, what application are we talking about?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Going to use.
So Irving, I have a couple more questions here, and Mike, I don't want you to have a crystal ball, but for the next year, for the coming year, can you paint a picture of how you think this is going to unfold? I mean, you mentioned the MCP,
Yeah,
is very new. Just give us a flavor of how you
Yeah.
see this, what's coming in the next year.
yeah. So let me talk about, because of course, MIT is also renowned for world-class technology startups. So there's an incubator out there right now, right? And let me address what's happening in startup land. And so what we're beginning to see, right? So yesterday or a couple of days ago, Dave London is a very proud MIT alum, and he runs Link Ventures out of Cambridge. And many of his portfolio company founders are MIT and Harvard grads. His LinkedIn post went on to say, and I verified this with him in person yesterday, they are generating 1 million lines of code every single day within the Link Ventures studio. 1 million lines of code. Think about that for a second. Now, let me extrapolate from there. We are seeing, for the first time ever, startups that are getting to $100 million in annual recurring revenue with teams of 5 to 10 people.
Wow.
Over a period of 6 months. And so these are organizations that have leaned in heavily to using agentic AI to scale at rates that were historically inconceivable to us. Okay. So we're going to see a transformation in the world of, startups. We're already seeing it. The data is already out there, right? And every month there's a new rocket ship. One company that is well known is a company called Anysphere, and they have a product called Cursor. They went from 100 million in ARR in January to 200 million in ARR in March, 2 months. Okay, with a almost skeleton crew of people by using AI in the development organization, in their sales and marketing. So this to me is a preview of what we can expect to see down the road. Now, obviously, they don't have the hierarchy and the internal bureaucracy that large enterprises do.
Mm.
But I do believe we're going to see some large enterprises in the next year that are going to be pushing at the frontiers of what agentic AI is capable of, with some use cases that are going to be very compelling and that everybody is going to say, I want that. Right. So again, it's still going to be the great frontier, but I think it will have, over the next 12 months, if we're talking, a calendar year or 12 months from now, there will be some enterprises that will have demonstrated to the rest of the world what's capable. And then the McKinsey, obviously a continuous and very generous sponsor, wrote a paper recently called The Synthetic Workforce.
Mm.
And I think we're going to start to see, and Irving sort of, mentioned this earlier, we're going to have teams
Yes.
of humans
And
and agents
yeah,
working. We're going to have to learn to manage the synthetic workforce. They're going to be colleagues of ours. We're going to have to make
yeah.
friends with them,
And
go
by
out
the
have
way,
beer with them after work. Yeah.
the key, and this is the way I'm wrapping my head around it.
Yeah.
The human engineering team, and I'm using my words very carefully,
Yeah.
that pulls together the right human and agent collaboration effectively, they will do the best. And and if somebody doesn't have engineering experience,
Yeah.
they shouldn't say, well, it's AI, so now I'll try it.
Right. Right.
No, you shouldn't. You
Right.
have to be very good at knowing how to do complex application and
Right.
systems engineering. And some startups will be very good at that. Large companies like Microsoft,
Yeah.
Google, and others will be good at that. So we'll see. I mean, this,
So, Mike, how does MIT adapt? How do we begin to train the next generation of technology leaders for this,
Yeah.
wave? I mean, the way you describe it, it just seems almost unbelievable. I mentioned to you that I helped an MIT professor teach a class that had to do
Right.
with AI. I
Right.
almost feel like the class, which is only April 4th,
Right.
is
Right.
already obsolete. And
Yeah.
we're going to have to do something completely different next year.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who is doing a lot of exec ed AI education, I will tell you that my content is changing weekly, Alan. It's changing weekly, right? So, you think about the way that we taught engineering, right? It was more or less the same for 100 years, okay? And all of a sudden, it is changing at light speed. So if I can speak for a second to what I'm seeing at business schools, right? So this semester, for the first time, Harvard is requiring all of their first-year MBAs to take a course called DSAIL, Data Science and AI Leadership.
hmm,
And if you look at the curriculum, it's very robust, and they will be programming. Wharton just announced the same thing. Now, I have not seen, and I could have missed it, I have not seen that same requirement out of MIT Sloan, but I'm sure it's coming. Okay. And MIT Sloan has certainly integrated AI into a lot of its curriculum and its pedagogy. Now,
Do you see students having an AI agent as a companion as they go through school?
absolutely. I mean, we're seeing this not just at universities. If you look at like Sal Khan in the Khan Academy, right? He created an AI-based application using OpenAI as the foundation. And he built something called Conmigo, which means with me. And there are AI tutors that are being used, in middle schools and elementary schools right now, AI companions that are, quizzing students and providing support.
And what side effects do you think there's going to be?
Oh, that's a huge, we're going to need a 40-hour podcast for that, my friend. That's a big one, right? And let's be clear, right? There's no question that if you become too reliant on this too early, you lose critical thinking skills and you lose the ability to have that work ethic. So this is a huge societal issue.
Yeah, by the way, I feel more comfortable
Yeah,
talking about the evolution of these advances in the world of business,
yeah,
the world of science, in the world of medicine, than I do in whether each of us are going to have an AI companion,
yeah,
just because,
yeah,
the world of science and research and business, first of all, it's more quantifiable.
right.
No, Irving, we can't just put blinders on and just be technologists. Those days are over.
I
We need to look at these. This is a holistic set of problems. We need to be free to discuss all aspects.
no,
These
no,
are
we can.
powerful technologies.
I just feel that 10 years from now, the use of the things we've talked about in business, science, research, medicine will be quite advanced. Their use as a companion that will guide,
Yeah,
my life is so much more complicated. Remember, people go to therapies.
yeah,
There is a whole section of the brain that's difficult to access uh, because it's the our unconscious brain. Let me put that aside and let me focus on the more concrete
yeah,
things. That's my. Now, I'm not saying there may not be breakthroughs,
right.
but maybe this is because I grew up in the business world, in the
Yeah,
technology world. I'm more comfortable predicting that future
yeah.
than the individual's future.
And it's interesting. I think I interpreted your question very differently, Alan. I think it seems like Irving interpreted more on a personal level, but what I'm thinking about, right? So I'm using AI very, very heavily in all my coursework, all my pedagogy, right? So I have trained AI models for my students to use that serve as the companion word may not be the right word, but as a subject matter expert.
Well, how about as a tool?
As a tool, yeah, or as a tutor or something like that, right? And so there's no question that, that's already happening. And, at Harvard, right, I'm probably one of the very first few that is doing that this year, and sort of helping to guide other colleagues within Harvard DCE on how that's working, right? So there's no question that there is room for a tutor or a subject matter expert, but I'm not in any way thinking about the other companionship, which is the friend or the emotional support. Am I able to enhance the learning of students by using AI, right? That's really what I'm referring
And
to.
the and
Well,
Yeah,
and this is what the topic was when I helped Linda Rabia,
yeah,
uh, teach this class to her concourse program students. These are
right.
freshmen who come into MIT. The focus was,
Yeah,
what's the impact to critical thinking of
yeah,
using AI? And I think that in some ways she was astonished by the examples that the students brought up of how they are using AI in a variety of ways. I won't get into it, but
right.
the fact of the matter is that you talked about how agentic AI has a exponential curve that's much faster than Moore's law, and we know how quickly
Yeah,
technology has already been coming. I mean, we there's going to have to be a shift in order for this to be adopted into the enterprise. You mentioned that this is 5 to 7 years. Well, in 5 to 7 years, the enterprises are going to be absorbing the students that we're graduating today.
that's right. That's
So
exactly
it's
right.
not like we can just sit here and say, well, things will take care of it themselves. We need to be thinking about how we're training the future leaders.
I agree. And now let me just say this, right? So, of course, in the US, we're very, very laissez-faire, okay? Every man or woman for themselves, right? If you look at an enlightened country like Singapore, they had their first national AI policy in 2019, right? They've revised it several times. And they're looking at, upskilling every single citizen, subsidizing their education so that they become AI literate, right? And we don't have a government that is looking at that on any level. This is a decision that's being made school district by school district. Okay. And that is dangerous because we're already falling behind. So I agree, right? And so, so the students that are going to be graduating, I will tell you, right? So one of my favorite classes I teach at Harvard is I teach a summer course on entrepreneurship to high school students. And now a lot of them are going into college and they're asking me, what should I major in? And my message is the jobs that you think are going to be there in 4 years, because so many of them want to go to an Ivy League school or an MIT or a Caltech. They want to be analysts at investment banks. They want to be analysts at top tier consultancies like McKinsey and BCG. Those jobs will not exist in 4 years. They will not. And so they're going to need to think about what they want to do when AI is omnipresent 4 years from now. And they need faculty member and advisors who can guide them on that. Absolutely.
So, Irving, given the fact that you just had your birthday and that you are now 80 years old, perhaps you would like to have the last word, and then I think maybe we bring this conversation to a close.
How appropriate. Thank you. Yeah.
Listen, I am struggling at my age now to absorb these new advances. And at some point, I'm so excited that there are these advances that I can think about and put my brain to. But if there is something that I'm not happy about, is that because I'm no longer working full time, I no longer had the kinds of jobs that I had at IBM with the internet, parallel supercomputing. I'm not in the middle of trying to organize how all this stuff should be deployed in the marketplace.
Right.
I am jealous of generation that has that responsibility because I think it's going to be incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. And Irving, what you are doing at 80, your ability to keep up is mind-bending. And I'm sure there are a relative handful of people that
I don't know if I'm keeping up.
Oh, you're keeping up.
I am trying. No. Why
Okay.
don't we agree to say, and you are doing your best to keep up?
Yeah, and I think we all are. As I say, we're drinking from the proverbial fire hose every single day. Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, with that, I think I'm going to bring this podcast to a close. I want to say thank you very much to Mike for becoming our guest. You're two of my favorite people to talk to. I just remind everybody again, we're going to have an open Q&A next week on the 22nd. You'll at least get me and Irving. You might get Mike too.
Well, we should get Mike.
Yeah, let me open my calendar right now, okay? I'll make a commitment right this second.
All right, make a commitment right this second.
Yeah. So the 23rd, is that right?
22nd, Tuesday.
22nd. You got me. I'm in.
All right. So you're going to get the three of us, open Q&A, join the Innovator Network. You're going to get cheaper tickets to the symposium if you do that. It's only $75 a year. Come on May 20th. We want to see you in person. But that's all we got for today. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.